Well, welcome everyone. This is another one of my series of subject matter expert interviews. I interview subject matter experts throughout the country on topics that are important and pertinent and crucial for us as we work in the college admissions area, profession. And today with me, I have a good friend, somebody I've known for many years, Bill McMurray. And Bill is an independent educational consultant from Portland, Maine, but he has a lot of experience both in the secondary and in college, especially in college admissions. So welcome, Bill. We're glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Cindy, and welcome to all the UCLA students out there. It's nice to be with you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been involved in college, and tell us a little bit about your background in secondary and college admissions.
Okay. Well, when I first graduated from college in the late 70s, I, like many of my time, took the first job that came my way, and it was in sales. After a couple of years of doing that, I decided, or was coming to the realization that if I was going to sell something, it was going to be something more important to me than dairy products that I had been enlisted to sell. And around the same time, a very good friend of mine who was a couple years older had gotten into college admissions and was telling me about his typical day and some of the things he was responsible for. And it sounded really interesting. Fortunately, it was something that one did not need a major or a degree in to dip one's toe in the ocean. All you needed was good communication skills and an undergraduate degree and a willingness to learn and a lot of energy. So I managed to scrape up a few interviews without any experience and was offered a job at a boarding school in Indiana as my first gig. And for a boy from Maine, that was, for me, that was very adventurous. Now, in retrospect, maybe I should have gone all the way to the left coast, but it was a great experience. And I learned quite a bit about the admission process, even though I was recruiting ninth graders instead of college students to this boarding school. I learned how to manage a travel territory and schedule and do all of those kinds of things. But decided fairly soon thereafter that really the college scene was what I wanted. So I did some exploring and enrolled in a graduate program in higher education at the University of Vermont, where I learned a great deal over 2 years about the structure and function of colleges and universities of all sizes and shapes. Had some really good practical experience across the university, worked as a fellow in the admissions office, particularly with respect to transfer policies and that sort of thing. So that was my real kickstart into the college admission world. And from there, I actually, from the experience of reviewing applications, got very interested in the idea of secondary school guidance. And having been working in receiving of these applications to the university for a couple of years, I had this innate curiosity about what went into it. I had gone to a fairly good-sized public high school where there wasn't a lot of programming around college, and there really wasn't much in those days anyway. So I left when I finished my degree and work at UVM. I went to a small Catholic day school, private high school in the Boston area, and was director of college counseling there for 3 years, where they had never had a professional college counselor before. It had been teachers. So the idea of expanding the sight lines and looking at schools outside of the immediate area and challenging kids to raise their sight lines was something I really enjoyed doing. It kind of shook the school up. It was a great experience for all of us. Then I actually had the opportunity. I got a phone call one day from Wheaton College in Massachusetts, which had just made the decision to go co-ed. I was working at an all-boys high school at the time, but through professional associations had gotten friendly with some of the staff there. And they were looking for a senior associate director to come in and be part of this exciting institutional transition. And I signed on, and really Wheaton was my professional home on 3 separate occasions during my career for a total of just over 20 years. It's probably where most people know me from, because at one point or another I had the whole country as a territory during that time. And really learned the ins and outs of not only the selective college process when it comes to application review and that sort of thing, but also really being deeply rooted in policy and managing a staff and really representing an institution on so many levels. And it was really, it was tremendous and really a defining experience for me. Since the early days at Wheaton, I have also worked at another private secondary school that was not religious, that was very high-powered academic school with a ramp up into college. Unfortunately, an administrative implosion sent almost all the faculty away after about 2 years, and they had a complete turnover until they got a new head of school. We were all swept up in that, but these things happen as well. I actually had the good fortune, my second tour of duty with Wheaton was to serve the college from the West Coast. I had, my then wife had gotten a job in Silicon Valley, and we were moving to California anyway. So Wheaton offered me the chance to return. And what that really gave me was the opportunity to really be the face of the college in a 9-state area in the West. Really, learn the ins and outs of school systems everywhere from Anchorage and Juneau, Alaska, to San Diego and Southern California, the Rocky Mountain states. So I really developed not only a sense of the schools and the preparation that kids were getting, but also a tremendous network of colleagues on both sides of the desk in schools and colleges that is really the backbone of anyone's relationship with this profession is the network you develop and the friends and colleagues and mentors and people you mentor along the way that really keep the excitement alive. And we were talking a little earlier, Cindy, off screen about how we often, every year, we have to debunk the same myths over and over and over. But when you're doing that as part of an extended team of colleagues across institutions, and you all share a lot of the same goals and can share methodologies and best practices, it really makes this profession a lot more enjoyable when you're in it for the long haul. Have also had some experience in the charter school side. When I was in San Francisco, I worked for a couple of years as an administrator for a charter school organization as we set up 4 new high schools around the Bay Area. My job was to sort of build that school to college link by helping to hire the counselors for the high schools, but also to get out and pound the pavement and prepare particularly the CSUs and the UCs for the applications they were going to be seeing from these kids and how they were going to look somewhat different because of the nature of the schools being set up primarily for low-income and first-generation kids as fully college preparatory, lots of portfolio work and so forth. So that was really fun. I was able to extend my interest and career in admissions to actually discussing issues of enrollment policy with the public flagships. It was kind of interesting and how they could and could not be flexible in certain situations, and really had fun with that. But so I've had this perspective of being in so many different environments over the years related to the admission process, and many of them in a leadership role. And it really has been an asset wherever I've been in terms of problem solving, because I can see or imagine situations from a number of different points of view, and not strictly the point of view of my own institution or my own high school experience or what happened to my children. I've been in these different venues. On the other hand, seeing how all of these different constituencies handle some of the same problems leads to levels of great frustration when I see the potential for a solution that nobody else can really puzzle out. Don't mean to sound omniscient, but perspective can be a double-edged sword in that respect. Right. If you think change should be inevitable, but the wheels just don't move as quickly as you would like.
That's very true. And so you've really had quite a view from all sides of the desk, and now you're on the third side of the desk as an independent.
I'm under the desk now.
You're under the desk. So you've seen, and you've been in this process, as we said, on both sides, how have you seen the college admissions process change over the years?
Well, I think if you were to ask, deans and directors these days, some of whom were around in those roles when I was getting started, I think they would say with a straight face that the mission of the process, as it's meant to be, has really remained much the same as it was, to attract and enroll capable, motivated students who have the potential for success at our institution in all ways, in and out of the classroom. But I think I was trying to think of this in terms of one or two big changes, because so much has changed. But the two, I think the way colleges look at their pool of prospective students is probably one of the biggest changes. Prior to the early 1980s, colleges really didn't see themselves in direct competition with one another the way they do today. I think there was, sort of a friendly rivalry between and among colleges in the same leagues and so forth. But no one was really worried that, they're going to make their class and I'm not, or we're doing something wrong and they're doing something right, or whatever. There really wasn't that level of interinstitutional competition that was so overt. Around the middle of the 80s, however, people began to realize that the number of available high school graduates was in a fairly significant decline. And so people began marketing to help ensure that they would get their fair share of that declining market. I think Arthur Levine, who was president of Teachers College, called it going first class on the Titanic. And I think there's a lot to be said for that mentality of the time, that we can rearrange all these deck chairs and go first class, even though we know that the ship itself is not going to last for long. But what began as a few colleges kind of experimenting with some business models and some marketing practices has obviously over years morphed into a multi-billion-dollar industry with consultants available to help colleges with just about every aspect of the process for a fee, of course. So I think that the fact that this pool of applicants is seen as a sort of a lifeblood to colleges, as opposed to sort of the one student at a time and making matches, that was sort of the old school way of doing things, is perhaps the biggest change. They look at their pool more sort of demographically and with an impersonal eye. You are admitted based on what you are, not on who you are. To a large extent these days. And the other obviously major contributor to what we see as the frenzy today is the astronomical rise in college costs. I remember when it was announced in the spring of my junior year at Bates College in 1977 that our tuition, room and board, and fees were going to creep over $5,000 for the first time. We were apoplectic and outraged and staged a sit-in and did everything that, short of anarchy that nice college kids of that era would do. Well, here we are nearly 40 years later, and the same charges at that same institution are now nudging up really close to $70,000 per year, which is an increase of 1,300%, which outpaces the increase in the cost for food, for energy, for housing, even for healthcare. So the cost containment crisis is something that any of us who have worked in and around colleges for the last 25 or 30 years is very, very conversant with. And of course, different colleges, different systems are going to have different ways of dealing with those issues. And, the financial aid system, the federal financial aid system, coupled with the college's pockets could handle most of the need-based aid back in those days. But these days, colleges really are responsible themselves for the bulk of the need-based aid that's given out. Pell Grants and Stafford loans don't even account for anywhere near a third of what's given out. So with this kind of burden on the colleges, it stands to reason that they have a responsibility to their alumni and to their boards and to their students to manage their resources effectively. And that doesn't always mean being able to give the aid to the student that you really want, that he or she really needs to enroll. So that whole the interplay of cost and demographics has created a much less personalized process. Colleges are still doing noble work to try and personalize as much as they possibly can. But like I said, I think the biggest emphasis, the biggest change has been the shift from applicants being dealt with and admitted based on who they are to a system that really, until you get there as a new student, you're being dealt with based on what you are.
So looking at that from that perspective and having the change in the process and the way people are looking at it and what colleges need to do to fill the classes and these financial aspects that you've covered, what can we as counselors do? So, we are working with these students. What do you recommend as an approach from the counseling side for this?
Well, I certainly don't claim to have all the answers, but what has worked fairly well for me and my partner so far, we spend a fair amount of time in the very beginning of the relationship with the student and the parents especially, talking about the notion of affordability in the same context as we talk about the academic fit and the social fit and the size fit and all of those aspects of fit, that affordability has to be, and it's a very personal and a very family specific notion of affordability. So we get deep inside their, as deeply as they'll let us, inside their finances to understand, where their money is going and what seems to be, perhaps not regardless of, but in concert with what the government is saying they ought to be able to pay for education. How does that feel? And what's the reality? What's the willingness? What's the true ability to pay? And let's take it from there and couple that with some education about how this process works at the college level. So they don't simply see it as this draconian, you're in, you're out, you make that they understand why colleges make the decisions they make in terms of their aid and awarding policies, their packaging policies, that, some can defend their policies more logically than others, but that they do vary, but that it isn't personal. And really try to, from the very beginning, carry on the notion of affordability along with the other aspects of fit, even when you have to say, well, yes, you might be admissible to college X and they have agreed to meet your full demonstrated need, but you're telling me that your demonstrated EFC is about 3 times what you can actually pay, and they're not going to make up that difference. So what are you going to do? And so to be strategic and to talk about the need to be strategic from the beginning and not simply start this process from the point of view of chasing brand names. And thinking that, we can apply and get in and then the finances will take care of themselves. We've all seen that go wrong in April way too many times.
Definitely. That's very, very true. So that brings up the whole topic of merit scholarships, because the transition that you talked about in terms of marketing and everything, oftentimes we hear that described as strategic enrollment management, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as part of those, that strategic process and colleges being able to entice students to come is merit scholarships. So what role do you see as scholarships and how to use those in your strategies as a counselor and with students and parents?
Well, I think from the college point of view, and I like to make the distinction between merit scholarships and non-need awards, okay. Because you know that there are students who get money thrown at them by college. I shouldn't say thrown; that's a pejorative term. They are given financial awards from colleges but not based on academic merit or anything other than the fact that they probably could pay the full bill, but they're not going to be asked to. So I talk with clients, and it's really important to understand how colleges, strategic enrollment management kind of hinges on a concept called net revenue. Whereby, we used to look at the people who could paid the full freight. The people who needed financial aid got financial aid. They paid what they could. And from what they could pay and what from everyone else did pay, we funded everything. Nowadays, there are the financial aid, the awarding of institutional dollars toward tuition grants or whatever can take so many different forms, even in the same institution. There might be scholarships based on academic merit. There might also be the $5,000 presidential award that is given to every full pay student as an enticement that, maybe 5,000 will actually convince this kid to enroll here as opposed to there. They have all kinds of matrices that they can overlay to give the college a sense of the student's affinity, how much they might be inclined to enroll. And this is where the whole demonstrated interest piece comes in. And like I said before, there is a consultant or a consulting firm to help colleges drill down on just about anything. If they want to increase their enrollment of STEM students, or if they want to decrease the interest in a particular thing, or if they really want to raise this statistic or whatever, there are ways through mathematical modeling and through pouring enough money at something that you can probably affect some change. I worked at an institution that withstood the push of non-need awards for a long, long time. As long as they possibly could, we held fast to that any aid we award is going to be need-based only. Unfortunately, this college did not have a large enough endowment really to sustain that as the need level of the student body continued to climb, particularly after 2008 when everything kind of went down for everyone. And I think that 2008, the impact of that on colleges and universities is still being felt 8 years later, given the loss of endowment funds and the collective losses of families who were previously able to pay more. But I think understanding the idea of net revenue and understanding as a student that someone with a profile just like yours may get into a college because they have more money than you do. And the fact that ability to pay has become another criterion with which colleges evaluate applications. They may make decisions based on ability to pay, or they may make allocation decisions of non-need awards based on ability to pay. So the folks with more money may get a little bit more or a little bit less. And it's all driven by mathematical modeling. And, I've been inside that sausage factory, and it's really fascinating, but it's not always pretty to individual students. I think the most important thing that kids can do is to really understand the colleges they're interested in and what kind of aid they are giving out. Are they a college that is awarding non-need money as well as merit-based aid? What sort of merit-based packages, if the student has need, what kind of merit-based packages are typical in terms of amount of need met based on the forms? Now, and then you have to take that into consideration as far as, does that level of need that they're telling you have bear any resemblance to what you really have? And we spend a lot of time with families in the springtime poring over financial aid awards and trying to make sense of them, because in their ever well-meaning, colleges will sometimes make their aid letters very hard to understand, and there, to this point, there has not been a standard form. I understand there's a big push for that.
That's been out there for a long time. They've been trying to do it, but it just, because the financial aid award is a marketing tool for the college, just like everything else. They're going to make it look as positive and as inviting as they possibly can.
Some places are much more transparent than others about their financial aid policies. And for your students who are looking for colleges that really spell things out nicely and clearly and really, I think, do a really good job for families, one that comes to mind right away is Muhlenberg College in Pennsylvania. They have a couple pages on their website that really outline their entire packaging policy from soup to nuts. And they're very clear about things, even when they know that the family probably isn't going to like it. For example, the fact that they're test optional for admission, but that you have to submit test scores to be considered for merit. They're just very open about those kinds of things. And if all colleges would follow their lead, that's confusing out there. But the strategy, obviously, if a student is someone whose family cannot pay the full cost or does not want to pay the full cost of education, then and are eligible for little or no need-based aid, then the idea of looking at the Ivy League schools and the NESCACs and the others that say they meet full need, it makes that they will be paying full freight at those colleges because there is no non-need aid. The strategy then shifts for these folks to colleges that either have a lower cost of attendance to begin with, or have merit or non-need award packaging policies that seem to include students like this one. And so we try a mix of things, and in the end, the clients I've had who have gone that route have usually ended up with an array of choices at varying levels of expenditure. How much do you really want to spend? Is that bumper sticker worth more than this one? And and I can get them to that point, but then they have to make the decision.
Right.
And the beauty of not being institutionally affiliated is that I don't have to worry about their final choice in terms of making my class or having a Princeton admit on my school profile. For me, it's all about the kid. And if the kid and the family are happy with their decision in the end, then I've done my job.
I've worked with, I'm in Central California. I've worked with the AVID program. Many of my students, and even students that I work with as a consultant, are first generation, and I have students in the schools that I work with that are zero EFC, and it makes me worry. It's like, where are they going to go, and how are they, they, at least sometimes they're first generation, they're often first generation Americans, so they're the first ones in their families to even go through the system itself, let alone go to college, but they don't have that ability to pay. And so how is that affected by all of this?
Well, we don't have in Maine. We don't have the preponderance, if you will, of first generation communities. We have first generation folks within many of our communities, but there isn't this. I think the knee jerk response is that community colleges are the great starting point. They're low cost, they're easy entry. But because they're low cost and easy entry, there's also, I would imagine, a fair amount of exploration that doesn't lead anywhere. And their students aimless, and there's not a high enough completion rate. So students may be affected by that in their peer group. I think, and we always hear those wonderful stories about the first generation kid from Community X who is plucked out by University Y and basically provides them with a launching pad they never could have had, and they go off and found a company and come back and save the world. Unfortunately, those don't happen every day at every college. But I think when we come across kids like that, I think the responsibility, and it's not easy, is on the one hand to do all we can to help the family broaden their horizons beyond their backyard, to not be so afraid of getting on a plane to go somewhere necessarily. And I know it's not easy. It really takes a relationship, which you have to build over time, and they have to develop the trust for them to even listen to you. But at the same time, come up with ideas. And as well as I, that, and I wasn't aware of this quite as much until I started doing the work as an IEC, that fully half, if not 3/4 of the stuff I do is research. Looking for things and digging and calling people and asking questions and searching websites and asking about things that aren't on websites, and trying to take what you know about a kid and see how it fits with this or that or something else that you might have heard might be a good option. And there's no way for anyone to ever sign up me or I would say any other IEC with the idea that every conceivable possible option is going to come before me. It ain't going to happen. But can we at least come up with some ideas and some encouragement and hope to push the boulder up the hill one kid at a time? I still believe we can.
I agree. And I think that's where our profession is so key, because that's building those relationships, creating that bridge, working as college counselors, whether we're in a public school or a private school or just a regular counselor. I mean, there are no college counselors in our area. There is no such thing. Right. But we can take on that role and opportunities through career centers and other places and just build those bridges. And it's going to become even more important in the future.
We've been working with a school district in central Maine, very rural district. The school district is the size of the state of Rhode Island in the middle of Maine, and there's one high school. So kids have to many kids have to travel 45 minutes to an hour each way just to get to the high school every day. The high school sends about 30% of its kids to four-year colleges. Probably 3/4 of that are to Maine and the University of Southern Maine. So, not a tremendously well-educated or forward-thinking community, but lots of really good brain power in the schools and lots of great kids and families. So we've been contracted by a small grant-making place here just to pay for our up and back. But we've been doing workshops for the public in this school district. And what started as a workshop for rising juniors and seniors on sort of getting ready for the college process has now morphed into planning for college and starting with 7th and 8th grade parents. And it's just to see those little lights go off. Now, we haven't saved the world in 3 workshops, but we've heard that there have been a few families who have really been digging and really taken this stuff seriously after the fact. And these are folks who would never even consider or be able to pay our fee as consultants. So this is one little way that some of us who are independent can give back. And I know I'm certainly not unique in doing this sort of thing. The idea that just because no one in your family has ever gone to college, it not only does that not mean that you shouldn't, it probably means that it's your time.
Right.
And it's our time to make this happen for you. And it's that time in this country when we have to think that way for everyone, whether it results in, the ultimate goal of at least a free 2-year degree education for everyone, or whatever it turns into. I never was naive enough to think that as an IEC I'd be working only with full pay students, even though that's the way I think some people perceive the profession.
Right.
But I didn't for 1 minute expect that every single one of my clients would be in significant need of financial assistance. And that's been the case with, I think, one exception in 2.5 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's, the way that colleges handle their institutional aid disbursements and packaging can vary as much as the way they do their admissions. So it really involves on the part of us to sort of blaze the trail, and then the families ultimately to make those connections with the individual offices and people. What makes this process work in the end is the people who do it, and the people who care to do it right. As someone who's been a director of admission, I would say to anybody out there, if you ever encounter someone in an admission office at a college fair, working for a college, who says or does something that you believe is just, inappropriate or incomprehensible, I would suggest that you muster the courage to reach to that person's boss and say something about it, because I would have wanted to know. And I'm digressing here. So,
well, I think that's good words of advice, though. And it is a community, and we all are working together and promoting, the opportunity to do good and contribute back and create a difference for our future education. I mean, for our future generation and their education. And that's really what we're all about. Absolutely. So if my students want to reach you, how do they do that, Bill?
Well, my business is known as College Search U, the letter U. You could reach me, bill@collegesearchu.com. Telephone, area code 207-632-2722. Always happy to take questions or comments from interested parties. And the snail mail address is College Search U, P.O. Box 1813, Portland, Maine, 04104.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. I've learned a lot and generated a whole lot of other questions that I'm sure I'll ask you at another time. So
that's great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Good luck with all you do.
All right. Thanks, Bill.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.